We're going to Mars for the same reason Marco Polo rocketed to China, for the same reason Columbus trimmed his sails on a dream of spices, for the very same reason Shackleton was enchanted with penguins, for the reason we fall in love. It's the only adventure. And so what I did was take, I thought, iconic journeys. I deliberately used, for Marco Polo, I know he sailed, but I deliberately used rocketed because when he got to China, that's when he's going to make these incredible discoveries of these wonderful people and what they do. And of course, China was at high civilization when, you know, Europe was burning witches or something. And of course, Columbus wanted money. He wanted to be rich because he was poor. He's from Genoa. But he was looking for none of that. He wasn't looking for America or anything. He was looking for a way that he could bring spices back to Europe. Well, pepper's still a big deal. You go to a restaurant right now, they'll have salt on the table. And then, would you like pepper? You know, it's like a big damn deal.
Yeah.
He stands there and gives you like 2. Is that enough? And it's like, no, more. So we had that. And of course, Shackleton, because that, I'm a big fan of Antarctica. And I'm really hoping to get to Antarctica in the next couple of years. But I'm really wanting to go down. And one of the things that everybody said, well, why was Shackleton doomed? Well, he was doomed because he went into a frozen planet without knowing what that meant. But his men were upset because he only wanted to kill enough penguins to be able to eat. And they were like, we need to kill more. But he just wouldn't let them wantonly kill the penguins. And I just thought I thought it was wonderful. Because, you know, if you do what Shackleton did, you have to assume you're not going to make it. He loved something. And he maintained an ethical position as he went forward.
I mean, did you just pick Mars because you had other things to say, or are you actually interested in space travel and Mars?
I'm actually interested. I would volunteer to go in a heartbeat. I don't have any problem. Tim Luke discovered the crystal on Mars. So we know that there was water, and we know that life forms are possible without the elements that we of carbon-based unit need in order to exist. But we know that if we find the units of carbon, we find the elements, the carbon-based unit, then there's a good chance that carbon-based unit existed there. So finding the water on Mars, from the science point of view, only confirmed what the writers had always been saying, right? Ray Bradbury and them. I mean, we've all looked at Mars essentially as a sister planet. Jules Verne, we have to recall, picked Cape Canaveral as the place to launch. He was within 100 miles. I mean, think about this guy sitting in France saying, if I would send a rocket into space, and he's within 100 miles of
Wow.
of where we picked. That's pretty. That's close enough. Was it close enough for love? So all of this fascinating. And then we've got space. And there used to be something on television called science fiction theater. And then there'd be Salvin and, of course, ultimately Rod Sterling and Twilight Zone. So it's just a question of putting a bunch of things that I love, this is an awkward answer though, together to try to say, and what if we had been or could go to Mars?
I know you haven't had much time with the book, but can you tell us why you think when the 3 astronauts arrive on Mars and it becomes night, so clearly the Martians have had quite a bit of time to observe their trespasser. Why haven't the Martians just either shot them or taken them prisoners? Or
It's Mars' mistake. If they knew what I knew, they would. If the Martians had called me, I'd say kill them now. You know, and the rest of them that come after that, just keep killing them. Because it's very clear, and the book is going to do that. What's going to happen is that they're now going to go to Mars and decide they should kill the Martian.
Oh, I see, you're taking the sequel, yeah. Instead of when they all go to the Earth, planet Earth, they're all going to come and take over Mars.
Well, see, we go up there, but we're going to do what we did when we came to America. We were talking about it this morning in class. So the Iroquois and the Algonquin are now hotels. Am I right? Now, if Mars came here, for sure we would be killing them. You don't have to worry. That's not a second thought. And everybody that said don't kill the Martians would find themselves arrested. I can't imagine it. But you know that that's what we would do because that's what we've done.
That's what we've done.
And so we can't pretend that we didn't. I think it's a height of arrogance that we go to Mars and we decide we don't like the way you look. But we went to Africa, we went to Asia, we went to the islands of the Pacific, islands of the Caribbean, and said essentially the same thing. You look funny, we're just going to kill you. And the brutality is what carried the day. And I'm not a fan. Might does not make right. It's an amazing thing to me that we're being upset by what we're calling undocumented workers. They say aliens, but we'd almost have to go to Mars before we find an alien. They're undocumented workers. They're Americans. The Americas are two things, and they walk across the borders. So Arizona's position is we need to build a better border. Are you kidding? So that they can then, tunnel in? We have a Statue of Liberty that France was kind enough to give to us that says, send me your tired, your poor, your teeming masses yearning to be free. Once anything crosses our gravity, countries cease to matter because the answer to where you're from is Earth.
People are surprised when I say that Umberto Eco has written a children's book.
Yeah.
Well, they wrote it together. It wasn't like Umberto wrote it and then he translated it. They'd worked on a number of projects together. So, but they both agreed that older people are lost. If once they've gotten to a certain age, you can talk and talk and talk and do whatever you'd like, but if they are going to be racist or prejudiced or hate or this or that, you can't, they feel as though there's nothing they can do about it. And that's why they actually wrote a book for children. Do you agree with it?
I think that humans have an infinite capacity to change. And I think that humans also have a resistance to change. Everybody wants everything to remain the same. I don't think that old people are hopeless. I think that you have to give them reasons, of course, but young people accept things. So if you throw a bunch of people together in a room, the kids are not looking at the color or they're more likely to tease you about your glasses or your hearing aid, whatever. But I think that older people accept the value given, and I think that we like to cliche it out, that we have to change the young, but the old people have a responsibility and an obligation to change also. The Russians put Sputnik up, and we, thank God, got Jack Kennedy. And Jack Kennedy is an incredibly competitive man, as you know. He's not just a cockhand for no reason. He's always going to, do what he... And so he thought, okay, if you did that, then we should do that. We go because we can. And some of the best language that we've ever had in space came from Jack Kennedy, which was good for little girls like me because the National Defense Act loan came in, which allowed a lot of poor youngsters who dream to go to college. John Glenn, the first American to go around the earth, he's from a city in Ohio, it's about as big as this office. And they finally got John a degree. He didn't actually have a degree, but they had decided that the astronauts should have a college degree. So they got him a college degree from a college that's probably about the size of this desk. But mostly what he was is courageous. And it was fascinating to me as I'm watching Glenn try to turn that ship. What did it take for him to hold himself together to be able to right the ship and re-enter?
You talk about learning new songs and singing harmony. And of course that's sort of what happens in the book too, because when they all take off in the rocket they're singing things that are sort of out of tune, and by the time they get around the fire on Mars they're actually singing their own songs, but at least they're listening to each other's songs.
Well, there's a theory of jazz. Arnett Coleman would probably be the big practitioner. It's called like free jazz. And so the theory being, if everybody played what they wanted to play, in a few minutes there would be a theory that would emerge, and there would be a song. In order for that to work, you have to give people enough time to find their voice so that the voices then mesh. But with the three astronauts going to Mars and coming in with three different languages, there are tones. And so if they waited a few minutes, if they allowed it, they would end up with a common song.
If you were to choose 3 American songs that the American astronaut would sing around that fire, what comes to mind?
Kumbaya. The theory behind Kumbaya, of course, is the enslaved were saying, "Come by here, Lord, come by here." Somebody's crying. We ended up making it a camp song, but it was a prayer. It was not, a bunch of kids sitting around. And I think that's one song that if the American astronaut started to sing it, the Chinese astronaut knows, and so does the Russian astronaut, because for whatever Lord means for you, Lord have mercy is always going to be important. A lot of my own musical knowledge is based on I do jazz. Jazz is the way you play a music. So you could actually play Itsy Bitsy Spider, and it's jazz. If I could take music, of course, I laugh in there because I'd say take some Charlie Parker, and you have to take a little Billie Holiday. But if you say now which one, or I guess I could have said a little Louis Armstrong, and probably if I did that, and it would be the greatest Louis Armstrong at all. It's not the greatest, but what a wonderful world. One of the songs that I like to turn to, of course, is Leaning on the Everlasting Arms. But I think if you look at the songs, though, I've chosen essentially 3 religious sort of songs, and yet they're not, it depends on how we play them. I'd hate to live in a world that I only had 3 songs. I think make it with 3 books, but 3 songs would be hard.